Here's what's coming up on the world today. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he would not resign following lockdown parties at his Downing Street residence. US President Joe Biden considering imposing personal sanctions on Russian President Vladimir Putin if Russia invades Ukraine. Plus, US Coast Guard searching for 39 people missing off the coast of Florida after their ship capsized. Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. Thanks for joining me. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Begin in the United Kingdom, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting to remain in office despite clear indications he violated lockdown restrictions by hosting or attending parties at his number 10 Downing Street residence. Wait is ongoing for senior civil servant Sue Gray's report into parties held at Downing Street and other government departments. Meanwhile, as expected today, the Prime Minister faced a barrage of questions before MPs, many of them focused on him resigning. Labour's Rushanara Ali said the government had been lurching from scandal to scandal and asked the Prime Minister why he will not write his resignation letter to the Queen. Others, such as South East Cornwall MP Cheryl Murray, asked if Mr Johnson will continue to deliver on the priorities of her constituents. Labour's Lloyd Russell Moyle gave us a song. Happy unbirthday to him, happy unbirthday to him, he sang before MPs. The MP said his constituents think the Prime Minister lied and asked if Mr Johnson would resign. The Prime Minister said clearly he has no intentions of resigning.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I join with the Prime Minister in his comments in relation to Bloody Sunday? The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament will be expected to offer their resignation. Does the Prime Minister believe that applies to him?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, of course, but let me tell the House that I think he's inviting a question about an investigation which, as you know, Mr Speaker, I can't comment, and on which he, as a lawyer, Mr Speaker, will know that I can't comment on.
I think the Prime Minister said yes, he agrees the code does apply to him, and therefore, if he misled Parliament, he must resign. On the 8th of December, looks quizzical, he said it. So since he acknowledges the Ministerial Code applies to him, will he now resign?
Well, we would have heard the Prime Minister there say he will not resign. Well, the Prime Minister and MPs are not the only ones awaiting Sue Gray's report today. Londoners are as well. The report by the Cabinet Office official may determine Mr Johnson's future, but it is not clear when the results of the investigation into the parties held during the lockdown will be published, especially as police have opened their own investigation.
And was definitely against the spirit of what we were all trying to do as a nation. Yeah, and if he's broken the law, then bye, you know, off he should go. Because no one should be above the law, even the Prime Minister. And again, it was his birthday on the 19th of June. My baby was 8 days old. My mother couldn't travel over to come and see her. She didn't meet her grandchild until the child was, 6 months old because of restrictions and, all that kind of stuff. And we couldn't have friends round and nobody could see her, nobody met her, we were so insular. So no, he should have been able to read the mood.
Not upset, just angry. I think, he's had other scandals. His party have had other scandals too. It's not just him. So at this point, I'm just a bit apathetic about the whole thing because I just don't think anything's likely to change, but I was very angry.
If the investigation proved that he was breaking the rule, then yes, definitely he was breaking the rule because a lot of people are dying that time. People are following it strictly. Even today, everybody is on the mask, trying to protect themselves to the families. So as a Prime Minister, it was his responsibility to say, no, we shouldn't be doing that. If he's making a rule, you should lead by example.
And London correspondent Juliana Olaika has been following events at the events with MPs today. And Juliana, those walls and seats will have a lot to tell about today's Prime Minister's questions. But let's begin with Sue Gray's report. What's the update?
Goodness, well, that's a good question, Amarachi. We're all waiting. I think the entire British media camped outside Number 10, waiting for Sue Gray's report. In fact, I think Sue Gray is possibly the most popular female in Britain at the moment. Her name has been used so many times. I believe on Tuesday, when the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, surprised individuals by saying that, yes, Scotland Yard would be investigating these Downing Street parties. I believe there are 16 that are currently under investigation, at least in Sue Gray's report. There were suggestions that perhaps Sue Gray's report would be delayed until the findings of that police investigation, which would unprecedentedly see the Prime Minister being questioned under caution by police. But alas, that's not the case. Any moment now, Sue Gray's report will be released in full to the Prime Minister. During Prime Minister's questions today, Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, did ask the Prime Minister whether or not the public, as well as other MPs across the floor, would receive the entirety of that copy, because, of course, we know that it's all in the Prime Minister's hands. He could retract and only deliver a summary. He said he would release a full report, so that's what we're all waiting on. As soon as we have it, we'll definitely be reading it.
Yeah, and that report could make or mar Mr. Johnson's political future, right? He's not said anything today that he hasn't said before. He says he will not be resigning. But what happens if the Gray report shows that he did have those parties, did know about them, and even attended them?
Well, we certainly know, first of all, that he did attend some of these parties. At least 3 we know. We've seen picture evidence of him sitting outside of Number 10 in the garden next to his wife, then his fiancée, Carrie Simons, now Carrie Johnson, as well as his chief former advisor, Dominic Cummings. I'm sure we've all seen that picture. We know that he attended a party in the height of lockdown where he said he was there for 25 minutes. There were wine and nibbles outside. Again, it was revealed earlier this week that there was a surprise birthday party for him where up to 30 individuals were in attendance. And apparently, according to those who want to support him, he was ambushed with cake. So at least we know on the record he has said that he went to 3 gatherings. Are these parties? Who knows? But we do know that the evidence that Sue Gray has found is of severe significance, so much so that she provided that information to the police. So it's really important for our viewers to realise that the only reason why Scotland Yard are investigating is from the evidence of Sue Gray's report. So whatever's going to be in that evidence is pretty significant if she felt that she had to provide it over to the police.
Indeed, and perhaps the Prime Minister does think of himself as Winston Churchill, the former Prime Minister. I know he's once compared himself to him. Only in Churchill's case, he did at least maintain the support of King George VI. Does Mr. Johnson have the Queen's support?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, we're in very different times, Amarachi, so we certainly won't get any on-the-record reporting from the Queen, though I do have to very quickly say it is death by 1,000 cuts. That's what some people are saying about Prime Minister. Just some breaking news that's just happened, which is that Pen Farthing, a former military officer who was in Afghanistan and wanted to evacuate his pets and dogs, we've just found out that the Prime Minister had a hand in delivering those pets out of Afghanistan. On the record, he said he didn't do it. It's just, it appears to be a lie after lie that's being exposed by the Prime Minister. I've got to say, if anybody thinks they're having a bad week, try stepping in Prime Minister Boris Johnson's shoes.
Indeed, and it looks like it's only going to get worse. Juliana, thank you again. US President Joe Biden could impose personal sanctions on his Russian counterpart if forces invade Ukraine. This much is said following Western leaders' repeated warnings that Russia would pay a heavy price for invasion. President Biden himself says there would be enormous consequences for the world if Russia made a move on Ukraine.
I was watching one of you on television pointing out the fact that
President Biden's comments were made on Tuesday He had said he would consider imposing sanctions on President Vladimir Putin directly if Russia invaded Ukraine.
Would you ever see yourself personally sanctioning him if he did invade Ukraine?
Yes,
You would?
I would see that.
During a brief visit to a boutique in Washington, President Biden also said he may move in the nearer term some of the 8,500 U.S. troops who have been put on standby.
I may be moving some of those troops in the nearer term, just because it takes time. And again, it's not provocative. It's just exactly what I said. Is that as long as we have to reassure. If you notice, you don't see a lot of concern in terms of their security and of our NATO allies in Western Europe, but in Eastern Europe there's reason for concern.
Russia has warned that imposing sanctions on President Vladimir Putin personally would not hurt him, but would be politically destructive. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said U.S. congressmen and senators discussing personal sanctions against Russia's top leaders were ignorant of the fact they were legally barred from holding assets, property and bank accounts abroad. Individual sanctions against Putin would be not painful, but politically destructive. In the meantime, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on Ukrainians to stay calm about the threat of a Russian attack, saying work is in progress to bring about a meeting between him and the leaders of Russia, France and Germany. During a televised video address, he said this week's withdrawal of personnel from Western embassies in Kiev did not signal that a military escalation with Russia was inevitable. He told them, protect your body from viruses, your brain from lies, and your heart from panic.
Conflict that we have seen since World War II.
Director of the Transatlantic Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, Andrea Kendall-Taylor, warns that countries are looking at potentially the most significant conflict since World War II, as Western leaders step up preparations for any Russian military action in Ukraine.
I mean, I think we're looking at potentially the most significant conflict that we have seen since World War II. When you look at the kind of composition, the size, the capabilities that Russia is building up on Ukraine's border, it suggests that they're preparing for a relatively significant invasion scenario where they could possibly, encircle Kiev and take half of eastern Ukraine.
While the four-way talks between Ukraine, France, Russia and Germany continue, more than 20 Russian warships have entered the Black Sea to rehearse communications, safe maneuvering in areas with intensive navigation and the air defense. Russian military moves are being closely watched by the West at a time when a troop build-up near its border with Ukraine has sparked fears of a conflict. However, Moscow has denied it plans to launch an attack on Ukraine.
The United Nations Children's Agency says fears are growing for hundreds of children in a prison in Syria's Hasaka city after days of clashes with Kurdish-led fighters seeking to regain control of the facility. About 850 children are caught in the crossfire as Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, aided by U.S. troops, attempt to storm the prison after it was seized by militants last Thursday, leaving dozens of people dead.
Beyond concerned. I mean, the concern stage is behind us. We are talking about at least 800 children who are caught as we speak in the line of fire as the fighting continues in and around the Huwairan prison in the northeast of Syria. These children are probably witnessing atrocities that no child should witness. They need to get out of the prison as soon as possible. And this is exactly why we have called for a humanitarian corridor for UNICEF and other humanitarian organizations to be able to evacuate those children as soon as possible so that they can finally reach safety. Their lives is in serious jeopardy. Their lives is in serious risk as we speak right now.
Still ahead on The World Today. India showcases a military might during its Republic Day parade. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching The World Today, coming to you live from Lagos. Rescue crews searched all of Tuesday night for 39 people reportedly missing in the Atlantic off Florida by a man found clinging to a boat that capsized in what U.S. Coast Guards have called a suspected human smuggling attempt gone wrong. A survivor told authorities that he had left the Bahamas Bimini Islands, about 50 miles east of Miami, in a boat with 39 other people on Saturday night, according to the Coast Guards. Now, the survivors said the group's vessel capsized on Sunday when it hit rough weather about 45 miles east of Fort Pierce Inlet off Florida's Atlantic coast, about midway between Miami and Cape Canaveral. But no one was wearing a life jacket. According to the Coast Guard, the accident coincided with a small craft advisory posted in that area, with steady winds clocked at up to 23 miles per hour and 9-foot seas. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, Florida and Washington are along the same coastline. So how often are incidences of smuggling reported across the area?
Smuggling happens across that area quite often. The Bahamas is an area that is close to the U.S., as we all know. Typically, it takes about 2 hours by ferry to go between Miami and the Bahamian Islands. And so that is an area that many will try to get to the Bahamas, and then they know that they are pretty close there to Miami, and they will be able to make it to Miami in a short period of time. And there's obviously a much higher likelihood of survival if you're trying to come to the U.S. illegally, because of the fact of how close it is to that Miami area.
Yeah, and any word on those people who were said to be missing as of last night? The 39 people, any word on them?
Yes, there's about 38 individuals that they're currently looking for. There's one that obviously was unfortunately had passed away, that died as a result of the capsizing of the boat. And as you mentioned, the man that was found obviously extremely dehydrated, needing a lot of medical attention as a result of being there stranded. And so there's about 38 people that are in the rescue mode right now. They're actually looking as far as the New Jersey coastline, and those who understand the geography of the U.S., you know, Florida is all the way down at the bottom, and New Jersey is quite a ways away. So really being able to understand that obviously those winds and the weather that day was not ideal. And as we mentioned earlier, the ferries that go back and forth take about 2 hours, but that is in good weather. And typically ferries will not run if the weather is not in a position where it's safe to travel. And so it clearly was not very safe for the individuals. And so there could be even that they see the individuals all the way up to the New Jersey coastline. So that is currently where the rescue efforts are at this time.
Oh, pretty interesting. But clearly this is the U.S. really has not just a problem of illegal migration at the land borders, but also on the coastlines. So while much attention has been paid to the land borders, so talking Mexico and the U.S., what's the protection on the waters?
So the U.S. Coast Guard protects those borders, and as you mentioned, there's quite a few individuals. I mean, we've had, you know, close to a couple hundred individuals that unfortunately have lost their life just in the last couple of months, going back and forth between the Bahamas and the U.S. And so there are U.S. Coast Guards that are there. I think that is one of the reasons why the gentleman was found. This one survivor was found, because those borders are constantly, whether or not it's through helicopter or through boat, are monitored. And so we have obviously in years past, there's been individuals found and obviously taken and detained that are either smuggling, whether or not it's individuals, or oftentimes even drugs, unfortunately, are smuggled to the U.S. through the waters. And so that has been a heavy emphasis for some time. But as you've mentioned, over the last few years, the real focus has been on the land migration between the U.S. and Mexico, and not as much attention on the waterways, which I'm sure after this we'll begin to see new initiatives in place to address this, because we're seeing lives that are being lost as a result.
Maria, thanks again, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
But still in the United States, the government has begun distributing 400 million free non-surgical N95 masks to the public from its strategic national stockpile at various pharmacies, stores and community health centers across the country. It's all part of President Joe Biden's plans to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's more in the Global Update.
The masks are called N95 because they filter at least 95% of particulate matter from the air. The distribution of masks come after President Joe Biden and his team face criticism for not doing enough to encourage mask wearing or bolster testing as the Omicron variant rages across the country and hospitalizations hit a new record. The administration has also recently made free rapid home tests available via a website. Austria's government says lockdown for people not fully vaccinated against coronavirus ends on Monday, January the 31st, because the pressure on hospitals has eased. New daily coronavirus infections are rising, driven by the extremely contagious Omicron variant. The health minister, Wolfgang Mockstein, says they hit a new record above 30,000 today, adding that they could peak in the next 2 weeks at around 35,000 to 40,000. However, the occupancy rate of hospital and intensive care beds has been failing. South Korea's daily new coronavirus cases have exceeded 13,000 for the first time today, while the government seeks to revise its COVID-19 response to focus on the highly contagious but less lethal Omicron variant. The record of 13,012 comes just a day after the tally topped 8,000 for the first time amid a rapid spread of Omicron, despite the extension of tough social distancing rules. Omicron is likely to account for more than 90% of new infections over the next few weeks, with the daily number surging to 20,000 or even more. Finally, the long queues of trucks waiting to cross from Bolivia into Chile keeps adding pressure to government on both sides of the divide. Since mid-January, hundreds of trucks have been delayed as they wait for COVID-19 tests performed at the customs checkpoint in order to let them into Chile. Some drivers have spent up to 5 days queuing in the Tambo Comado mountain pass, where temperatures have been as low as 4 degrees Celsius recently.
शहीदों को याद करने का, उनके प्रति नमन का।
You see Prime Minister Narendra Modi there and President Ram Nath Kovind marking India's Republic Day as the 73rd. The ceremony is also being marked with a military parade. The number of attendees limited due to the coronavirus pandemic. The parade showcased the country's military prowess, tradition and culture at Rajpath, an elegant lawn-bordered boulevard. Mr. Modi also attended a ceremony at the National War Memorial prior to the parade, which we saw earlier, where he laid a wreath as a tribute to fallen soldiers. India won independence from British rule on August 15, 1947. But it was not until January 26, 1950, the nation declared itself a sovereign republic state with the adoption of its constitution. That's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.